push rods. No need to figure out which one goes where because they're all the same length. As you're going along, if you want to save inspection for later, you can. The main thing to notice on these is they need to be straight. If they're bent, that's an issue. And a really easy way to check to see if they're straight is to clean off the ends and roll them on something that's very flat, like your kitchen counter, or obviously this workbench is not the best place to do this, but you can get a good indication if they're bent by rolling it, and if it's bent, it'll wobble. There's our push rods. And now we have 4 head bolts left, and we can take the cylinder head off. Let's get to it. Once again, always a good idea to see how these are coming pretty easy. No problem there. Pretty confident I'm going to find a cylinder that has decent threads in it for the head bolts. So you don't want to send a cylinder out to have it bored for oversized pistons and then get it back to find out the holes, the threaded holes are bad in it. When you go to start going back together, that's a bad thing. And you may have noticed when I pulled the other head bolts, they were very long because they have to go through the rocker boxes. These are short. Once again, no need to keep track of where they go because they are all the same length. Okay, one other thing that you'll notice when you have the rocker boxes off is the cylinder heads are date coded. Well, the majority of them are, unless it's a replacement head that was sent to the factory from the factory to a Triumph dealer to repair someone's motorcycle. But you'll see there's this little oval on the intake side of the head, and it does say 6/8. That means there's a real good chance that this cylinder head came with this motor from the factory. On the other side, you'll see a casting number, basically a part number, casting number for the cylinder head. So far, everything's looking pretty good. The other thing worth noting, I can tell that these valves have not been replaced recently, even though I just found a nice pretty new looking gasket and some grease on there. You can see where the tappets have been running on the tips of these valves. And that little bit of wear there is really nothing to be alarmed with. If you do see a really deep indentation in there, it may be time for some new valves. That doesn't mean that these valves are bad, it just means they've been in service for a while. Not unusual to see some wear like that there. Okay, we're ready to take the head off. There's nothing else holding it on there. Pushrod tubes are probably going to come off with it. Oh, not. And there is our Marvel Mystery Oil that we just liberally dumped in there. And the pistons were pretty far up in the bore, so it's kind of getting everywhere. Not a big deal. We'll just wipe it off. It's not going to hurt anything, like I said. And then we have our head gasket, which is made from copper. I know back in the good old days, they used to anneal these. That was where they would heat it cherry red, dip it in water, and that would be annealing it where it would be soft and pliable to reuse it. For the cost of a new head gasket, it's not worth reusing. And then also notice there's some seals on the top of the pushrod tubes. Very critical on when you're reinstalling the head that you use the correct thicknesses on here to crush that gasket enough to seal it, because I get phone calls all the time from people where their pushrod tubes are leaking. Also going to see a seal on the bottom on the tappet block. So there's our pushrod tubes and our top seals. And then you see there's another seal here on the bottom. And those are much thicker on this particular engine, and they are very hard and not very pliable. Okay, now that I've taken the lower seals off, you'll notice this year motor has a little metal cup looking arrangement that goes on before the seal. Make sure you don't just throw those in the trash can, you know, thinking, oh, I'm replacing these seals, I'll just throw these away now. And see, there's that ring that goes on first supports this. I also like to save my pushrod tube seals, because if these were working before, let's say the motor was running and you're just refreshing the top end and you know they weren't leaking, because these seals come in 3 different thicknesses. So I generally just save them until I'm ready to go back together, and then I may use that as a starting point to put the pushrod tube back together again. These cylinder base nuts are 12 point. This is a 12 point Whitworth wrench. Oh my God, they're tight. So what we can do for that is we can use another wrench to get some leverage, like so. Look at that, bada bing. Because you can't get a socket in there, there's just not enough room. That one's pretty wobbly. Mother of God. More than one way to skin a cat. At this point, I don't think we're going to take the cylinder off right away. I want to give this Marvel Mystery Oil some time to, hopefully it'll go down there. So we'll just go ahead and proceed and take some other stuff apart. There's plenty of other things to do here. And whatever it takes to get this stuff apart without damaging anything, whether it be an extra wrench on there, rubber mallet, just use common sense. If you start doing something and you think it's going to screw it up, it probably will. So now that we have all these loose, we can go ahead and take them off in preparation for removing the cylinder. But like I said, I don't think we're going to go ahead and take it off at this point. But we do have to have these nuts off here for this. And I also put some penetrating oil on these before I started. As you know, a lot of times exposed fasteners like this, exposed to the elements and such, they can get some corrosion where it makes it difficult to come apart. Also, another thing I've noticed very frequently when taking these off is sometimes the whole stud will come out of the crankcase. Don't be alarmed if that happens. You can still lift the cylinder off. The stud will come up high enough to get out of here. You may have to lift it up a little to get it all the way off, but don't be alarmed by that. It's common. If that happens, don't worry about it. You'll be able to get the stud off of the cylinder later and reinstall it back into the crankcase. Right now it seems like so far these are coming off fairly easily, which is a good thing. Okay, gang. While me and my awesome cameraman Mikey were taking a little lunch break, came back and decided to check and see if maybe the pistons would break free. And when you weren't looking, I took a hammer and just kind of the wooden handle and gave it a little tap like so, and she broke free, no problem. And if you want to get a closer look here, you can kind of see in the bore where the rings were stuck. This side was stuck. It's a little rusty in there. You can see the rings. But that's a good thing. Now we can go ahead and take the cylinder off. Okay, next thing we want to do is we want to go ahead and put some zip ties on the tappets. And what that does is it keeps them from falling in, falling out when you're pulling the cylinder off. So basically, if you were doing just the top end, you don't want a tappet falling in the crankcase. And there's a couple of grooves on here. What you can do is just start your zip tie before you put it over the tappet. And then there's a couple of grooves on here, and you'll see that later after we get this off, and we'll show you. Like so. And you can also use a couple of pieces of hosing. You can just stuff it over. That'll also keep them in there. I like doing it with a zip tie. It's a little bit faster than looking around for some hose and screwing around, pushing it on all 4 of them. Once again, zip tie together, like so. Now, what I've found a good way to break the cylinder free from this joint right here, you can see there's some type of sealer someone put on the gasket. So a good way to do it is to use your rubber mallet, your dead blow, and when you hit your cylinder, you want to hit it square, like so. See how easily that broke it free? You can see there's a little gap there now. Just going to go around. You don't want to hit it like this, because then you stand a chance, or like this, because then you stand a chance of breaking a fin. So you just kind of want to see it's free now. So just kind of give it a little tap to break the seal there. And we're ready to go ahead and pull her off. No mystery here. Just going to give it a little rocking motion. And she comes right off. Look at that. Next thing I'm going to show you, very important. If you're doing it just the top end, or if you're disassembling everything, you want to protect your rods. We're not so concerned about the pistons because we are going to put new pistons in. I can see now that the bore is very smooth and the pistons aren't in very good condition. So we are going to go oversize on the pistons, send the cylinder to the machine shop, have it bored out for an oversized piston, fit a new set of rings. What you want to do is you want to get some 3/8 fuel line. And you can just slip it over these studs, like so. And what that'll do, you'll see here in a sec, as we take the pistons off. Now you can roll your motor up. Sometimes they're easy to get them to roll up. Sometimes it helps if you put your kicker back on. And then you can just, see, there you go. And you'll notice once the pistons are off, this rod could come in contact with that stud. So you don't want these rods banging into those studs. You want to protect your rods. Next thing, if we are doing just the top end, or we don't want the clips we're going to be removing from here to fall into the crankcase, so you want to take some rags and just wrap them around the rod and stuff it in the hole. Go ahead and get our rags wrapped around the rod. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 rags to accomplish this. So you just want to put it around the rod and in the holes. Like so. Okay, we can go ahead and cut our zip ties that we put on the tappets. We'll go ahead and I'll demo a tool to remove the tappet blocks in preparation for sending this out to the machine shop. And you can see now the tappets will just slide out the bottom. Generally the tappets will have a wear mark on them, and you can plainly see it on these if you come over here and take a look. That wear mark coincides with the shape of this. So it's always a good idea to notice wear patterns and replace parts the same way they came out. So these are just going to slide out like so. And then you also want to inspect the face of these. And you can see on these they have just a tiny bit of wear. As you can see, there's a line on there. That line across there is from when these are going up and down inside here. These are going up and down, the cam lobes are coming by and opening and closing the valves, and that wear mark is from the cam lobe. Now if you see where that line is very pronounced and very wide, I believe the spec in the book is 3/16. Generally, if I see any wear perceptible wear that I can feel with a fingernail, I'm going to have these resurfaced or I'm going to replace them. But at any rate, once again, pay attention to your wear marks. One other thing here that I want to show you is these were assembled incorrectly by the previous motor engine guy. You'll see there's a hole in there, and this is on the exhaust side. So you can tell that by this hole for the cylinder head is facing forward. So these are on the exhaust. This is a early motor, you're not going to see any holes. They don't oil. Later motor or cylinder, you're going to see this plug in there that's a cross drill. Pressurized oil comes through there and feeds these tappets. Well, whoever put this together put the holes facing in. See, there's a little hole on there that the oil comes to. Those aren't going to get any oil if they're facing in. They needed to be this way. So that just blows our wear patterns all to heck. So something else to pay attention to on this motor. Earlier motor is not going to oil the exhaust tappets. Go ahead and I took the gasket off. We're going to throw that away. And we'll go ahead and take a look at the intake tappets. Once again, there is no oil hole on the intake, so you don't have to worry about which way those face. Once again, we're concerned with looking at the wear on the tappet itself, and does it need to be resurfaced or replaced. And on this one, you can plainly see the wear pattern. I'm suspecting that this motor may have been run with those backwards. Okay, next thing we're going to do, we're going to use this tool, available on the website. This will remove the tappet blocks. Now, before you do that, you have to remove these two small screws. And they also have a sealing washer on them. That one is really stuck. There she goes. Sealing washer. Now, notice on this, it gets smaller. That actually locates in a hole on this. Very important when reassembling that that hole lines up. As you're inserting this, if it acts like it doesn't want to go the rest of the way, this is not lined up correctly. So we have that one out. Okay, now that we have all four tappets and the screws out of there, the little stud that has the funny end on it, we can go ahead and grab a larger hammer here. And one thing, I've seen these ears break off. So you kind of want to, these two holes index in there, and that fits like so. And then you're just gonna and there's your tappet block. And there's the hole that this locates in, like so. Now what can happen is, if when this is inserted in there and you'll use the tool to send it back home, if this is turned ever so slightly, that will hit it like so, and it won't want to thread in. So if you're having an issue with this, it might be a good idea to remove this, reinsert it. You basically, when you're installing these, you have to make sure that that hole lines up with that perfectly. We can cover that on reassembly. Okay, so there's one. No harm, no foul, nothing broken. Go ahead and take the other one out of here. Pretty simple. One other thing to notice on here. There's an O-ring there. It's so old, greasy, and dirty that you can't hardly see it. I'll go ahead and remove one so you can see what it looks like. And that is one of the main reasons I'm removing these. Well, number one, for the machine shop, here's the O-ring. And you want to replace that when reinstalling the tappet blocks. See, that one just broke. I don't think that's going to do its job. And there is also a guide to tappet block fit. In other words, the fit, the clearance between this and that hole has a specification. You can kind of get a general idea of how well it fits by putting it in there and see, is it loose or is it, this one feels nice and tight, like it'll be fully, no problem putting this back into service again. Now, if you felt a ton of slop back and forth, you can measure the OD of this, the ID of this, and subtract, and that will give you the clearance, and there's a specification in the book for that. Now, one other thing I'm noticing here, looking at the tops of these pistons, there's no carbon buildup. It seems to me that someone had this motor apart, judging by the fresh gaskets on the rocker box and the grease. They did clean something up here. Normally, 99.9% of pistons I find in these engines will have some type of marking on the top of them, whether it be a series of numbers, which generally means it's a stock bore. It's never been taken apart. Original pistons from the factory. And then what you'll see is oversizes. And pistons are available on the website in 20 thousandths, 40 thousandths, 60 thousandths, and 80 thousandths over. So basically what that means is, let's say we were at stock bore and we want to clean up our cylinder bore to put new pistons in. We're going to send this to the machine shop and we're going to have them machine the bore 20 thousandths over for the new pistons, plus the running clearance for the piston to cylinder clearance. So, I don't see any markings on these. A mystery. We have a mystery here. Well, there's a couple different ways you can figure this out. There's a tool called the dial bore gauge. Basically, you slide it in the bore and it has a gauge, and you rock it back and forth and you read it, and then you put your micrometer and it tells you what the bore size is. For you guys in your garages, probably everyone doesn't have a dial bore gauge. I don't have one because I'm not doing cylinder fitting. You probably use a vernier on there. That's going to give you a pretty good general idea of what our bore size is. 71 millimeter being a stock bore, we'll switch our meter to millimeters. And that doesn't look like a very good measurement, or I bumped it when I took it out of the hole. We're at 69 millimeters, so I'm guessing that this may be stock bore. There's another way you can check it with a different piston. Go or no go. I actually have a whole bunch of pistons hanging around the garage because I've done so many of these jobs that I could easily check it like that to determine what size you need. If you're not sure, you could always ask the machine shop you're taking it to measure the bore for you and let you know what size pistons you need, because they do need the pistons when they're doing the work in order to fit, because they measure the piston skirt and then they bore the cylinder and then add the running clearance. One of the things I get on the telephone occasionally is people ask me what the running clearance needs to be, and they've seen some specification in the book right around 3 thousandths, and that would be the piston to cylinder clearance. I probably wouldn't recommend doing that with the modern pistons. That might have been fine back in the day. I'd rather see it right around 4 to 5 thousandths. On our race engines, we go as high as 6 to 7 thousandths clearance, and the reason for that is because as the engine warms up and heats up, the pistons actually grow. And as a matter of fact, I just had a call the other day from a fella and said, just bought a bike, the motor was supposedly rebuilt. The second or third time he rode it, the piston's stuck in the bore. Basically what happened was they didn't give enough clearance for when the pistons heated up and got larger, and then they got stuck. Hence, tear it back down, redo the whole job. So something to keep in mind when you're thinking about having machine shop work done on your cylinder. Okay, we can go ahead and remove the pistons next. Now you might find there's 3 different types of clips used on these piston pins. This one has one that a snap ring plier works for. There's another one that's just a C-clip, and you're just going to put a pick on this little groove right here. You can see there's a groove. You're just going to put a pick and pop it out. This one takes this. And then there's also one called a spiral lock. Those are a little more difficult to remove. Most of the pistons you're going to be getting for these are not going to have a spiral lock. Simply remove that using your snap ring pliers. You only need to remove two of them, then you can push your pins out. Go ahead and do the same thing on this one. Can't see, there it is. Boom, piece of cake. There is a tool available for removing those. I don't really feel that it's necessary. Generally, you can get in from the other side and force that pin out. If it acts like it doesn't want to come out, I do have a punch I use for this. Very carefully do it that way, or you can also get your torch and heat the piston a little bit. The piston will grow, pin will slide right out. Like so. Since we took both outside clips out, we go from this side. And once again, a little common sense goes a long way. Obviously, you don't want to use something that's going to get stuck down in there, and you don't want to have to beat the hell out of it to get it out of there. If that's the case, if it's very tight in there, you want to heat it up a little bit. And there we go. Top end removed. Pretty simple. One other thing to take a look at, once again, if you're doing only a top end and you're not taking the cases apart, there's some bushings inside here. You can take one of these old pins. If you have, once you get your new pistons, you can always try it with your new pin. This is a similar fit when I was just talking about tappet to block fit. This is a very similar type of thing. There's a specification. The fit on this pin to this bushing needs to be a nice sliding fit with no rocking motion in any direction. In other words, you want to slide it in there and you want to rock it this way and you want to rock it this way. See that? That one is borderline. Once again, we'll try both of them. That one's pretty good. I probably wouldn't have a problem reusing these. See, we have a little bit of rocking up and down, no rocking back and forth. When these are changed, I actually have a set of rods over here that I've changed those in. And this is a new bushing in the old rod for another engine I'm working on. And if I had the pins, see how tight that is? This pin doesn't even want to go in there. Well, I have sized this bushing to the pins for the new pistons I'm using, and it needs to be a nice sliding tight fit with no rocking motion. If you slide your pin in there and that thing's wobbling all around, that means it's time to replace the upper rod bushings, which we also have these on the website. They do require to be reamed to size, so you're not just going to install it and slide your pin in, because anytime you install a bushing like this, it diminishes some of the clearance. Another thing you need to check.